work. And I'd like to start by thanking you all for coming. And if you've got to get up and make it to other things before we're done in this hour, that's no problem. You can go ahead. I won't bite you on your way out. I come with a sense of humor. I thought I'd start by just briefly telling you evolutionary astrology is a spiritually based method of astrology. It was developed probably almost 30 years ago by Jeffrey Wolf Green. It looks at the chart from the perspective of the soul. We use a formula with Pluto and the nodes of the moon to look at where the soul's coming from by way of past life patterning and how it sets up the intent or lessons in this lifetime. And so if you find any of today interesting, we're going to work more with health and wellness as it relates to the chakra system today. You've got two basic handouts. If you find our work very interesting, you're welcome to take this little envelope. It is a sample DVD of our correspondence course. And if we run out of these, this sheet right here is included in this packet. So I think I might have enough information for everybody today to grab that. And so today we're going to work with a subject titled the Chakra System. It's a lot of information to get through in the next 45 minutes. I'm going to try my best to lay us a good foundation for it. You are welcome to ask questions anytime if you have questions. I don't mind at all. I'll take the task of timekeeper and try and move us forward with this. You've all got the handout that I've put up on the board here in a very basic way that shows you our 7 major chakras and their planetary rulerships according to evolutionary astrology. These rulerships are basically coming from old ancient Indian rulerships. Jeffrey added in the outer planets. And what I'd like to do today is work us through all of these 7 chakras and how they will correlate from health and wellness from an anatomical basis, and then a little bit from the psychological basis. And again, we won't be able to touch on all the details, but we'll be able to get a good grasp of it. Again, if you find this information interesting, the little green flyer that was handed out is a live school that I'm going to be teaching for 1 week late this summer. You are welcome to contact us for any more information on that. When we work with the broad concept of health and wellness in evolutionary astrology, we work with it from both the Western and Eastern perspectives, as we call it. The Western perspective is working through all of the planets, the signs, the houses, and doing your astrological correlations to the many parts of our physical body that we know. We also relate it to the emotional, mental, and spiritual parts of the body as well. What we're going to concentrate on today is more of a support system to the Western system. This support system is more Eastern-based. It's working again with the chakras. And so we're going to start with the root chakra, work our way up to the crown. Many times when, I'll give you an example of this, when we will learn all of the concepts to the planets and what they correlate to in different parts of the body, you can be looking at an astrological chart. Let's say, for instance, you can have someone who has major stomach issues. And when you look for the moon, you look for the 4th house, you look for Cancer, you really don't see anything very active in that chart. Moon relates to the stomach, and it's all of the containers of the body. You don't see anything active, but if you go then to the chakra system and you start looking at the chakras, you see that you have someone who has a Mars-Pluto opposition in their chart. It will relate here to the 3rd chakra, which will then relate to the will and the stomach chakra. So this is how it will work as a support system. Again, that's just one example. There are many, many examples, obviously. And so when we start to look at the chakra system and its correlations to health and wellness, you will see when you start with the root chakra that there are 3 planetary rulerships: Saturn, Uranus, and Pluto. Saturn rules the outer layer of the root chakra, Uranus rules the middle layer, and Pluto rules the core of the root chakra. We're going to spend a little more time on this chakra because in our Western society we have a tendency to sometimes ignore or distort some of these lower chakras, so we're going to work with some clarity and correlation on those. When we look at Saturn as being the outer layer of the root chakra, this is that surface exterior. Saturn is the container. Saturn tries to go for security and hold everything within. What will happen with Saturn many times is there is a lot of consensus conditioning. So our root chakra, which is the core and the basis of how we bring all the energy up the spine, we don't work with very good self-empowerment in our Western society. We try to ignore some of these lower chakras, go right for the top chakras, and then get slammed into that physical body. And so Saturn will relate to all of that exterior surface that tries to hold the root chakra in and keep it dormant, keep it latent. So, and what will happen then is Saturn will then try to freeze this area, the root chakra. Now the root chakra, in regards to the physical body, will relate to everything in the lower extremities. It will relate to the nerves that correlate to anything in the lower extremities. All of your chakras are energy centers, and when you take the chakra and make it physical, you're relating to the nerves, to that area of the body, and how the nerves emanate out from that area of the body. So the root chakra will work with the nerves that go to anything from the lower parts of the body. Will also then work with the circulation of anything in that area of the body. I'll speak more about the nerves and circulation when we get into Uranus and working with the root chakra. But many times what we will find in our Western societies is due to the distortions of diet. We will have a lower extremity with the intestines, the colon, the anal canal, which Saturn specifically rules in the Western system, that do not work very well. And again, the energy gets stuck. And so what will happen then is the middle of the root chakra, which is ruled by Uranus, is what serves to break that up. And Uranus in evolutionary astrology will correlate to where we need to have an acceleration of growth. You probably will know from a lot of your traditional astrology that Uranus is the lightning bolt. Uranus will relate to shock and trauma. It will relate to waking us up. It will relate to bringing along the things that rock our world. When you put Uranus in the middle layer of the root chakra, when any of us start then to spiritualize our life, or we want to evolve our soul and start growing, we awaken Uranus. And when Uranus starts to awaken in the root chakra, it is, the analogy is thinking of an earthquake, and you got fissure lines, and what happens is you have breaks in the surface, that Saturn surface, and out starts coming that Uranian energy. What does that Uranian energy relate to? In evolutionary astrology Western system, Uranus will relate to the brain and the spinal cord and the central nervous system. And so that's where we start to bring in a lot of the nerves from the lower extremities for this. And so when we are having issues, Saturnian issues where things are frozen, and Uranus has to start finding its way out, and the energy starts breaking up, that's where we can get sciatic nerve issues, that's where we can have pains in the feet and the legs and all of that stuff that start to come in with those lower extremities. So you can start to look at these three planets and having the hard aspects. Everybody know what I mean? Hard aspects, conjunctions, squares, oppositions, but also semi-squares and sesquisquadrates. You start to look for those with these three planets, and you can start to then see some of the health correlations to these lower extremities. Dealing with the root chakra, with Uranus here, we will also then start to deal with the circulation issues as they start to come up the body, as they start to come up the spine. What happens then when that Uranian activity starts to happen and we feel the earthquake shaking? And one of the best ways for you to naturally start to make all of your chakras active is meditation. And meditation is something that, from our perspective, we break down into a very simple way. When you start meditating, the mind wanders. The left brain just goes bananas. And so for us, meditation in its most simplest form is just watching the breath, in, out, counting 1, 2. And doing slow, deep breath work, always bringing the body back to the count. You can go 1, 2, you can go in, out, you can make whatever 2 words up that you want to, but it's just the outer energy, the inner energy, and working your way through this again and again and again until you eventually learn to quiet down that left brain. And as you do, then you will start to work that energy up the spine. Now, exactly what energy are you going to be working up the spine as you work up the chakra system? The core is represented by Pluto. When Uranus starts breaking up that Saturnian outer surface and the energy starts coming outward, and you think of the fissures of an earthquake and the lava starting to come up, that lava will be an analogy to what we call the Kundalini energy. And the Kundalini energy is represented by Pluto. In evolutionary astrology, we look at Pluto as being the core of the soul. And so it rules the core of the root chakra, the base of energy. And the Kundalini gland, by the way, is the small, tiny gland that is just behind the root chakra. And our Western societies really don't even acknowledge this as a gland, nor do they acknowledge it as any energy that actually happens. Probably many of you in this class can recognize that there really is the Kundalini gland, and that when we start a deep meditation process, we start a deep spiritualization process of our life in all the many ways you can spiritualize. There's no specific route. It's just the desire and a broad base to know source energy. When we start to activate that energy and that core of our soul gets activated, as that starts through that root energy, then the Kundalini starts to work its way up the spine. It starts to work its way up through the chakras. And so there really is that lava or Kundalini energy that's going to start working its way out from this root chakra. Now, what tends to happen in our westernized societies, because we live in such a dormancy and having an inner authority and an inner connection to ourself, when we activate that Kundalini energy through the root chakra, it has a tendency to create chaos. It doesn't start out the whole love and light thing. It has a tendency to create a lot of chaos, a lot of trauma, a lot of life falling apart. Why? The purpose of Kundalini energy is purification. Purification. So what does Kundalini have to do? That energy has to meet anything that needs to be purified, anything that needs to be healed. As that Kundalini energy starts to activate and come up through the chakra system, the very first thing it encounters is the sacral chakra, the second chakra, co-ruled by Neptune and Jupiter. I'll explain that in a minute. But what will happen is the Kundalini raises from the root chakra up into the sacral chakra, and the sexual energy gets activated. Now, it's a misnomer. Many people think of Kundalini energy as sexual energy or Tantra energy. It's not. It's deeper than that. It's the core energy. It's the life force energy. And so it comes along in its purification process, and it hits the sacral chakra and activates all the sexual energy. Many times in our Western world, because we've had such distortions from natural spiritual laws and principles, of which the sexual impulse is a natural part of, because we've had such suppression of natural sexual energy, it distorts. So that Kundalini energy comes along and it awakens the memory on a cellular level, on an emotional, mental, spiritual level of all of the various sexual woundings that most of us have had throughout various past lives due to the distortions of natural sexual energy over at least the last 5,000 years. And so this is why it gets distorted. So we're not, the purpose of the sexual impulse from the physical level is procreation. From the deepest metaphysical level, it is to expand consciousness. It is to reconnect with source energy. And so the Kundalini energy raises along the base of that spine to then bring these impurities into consciousness. Now what we will have a tendency to do, Saturn ruling that outer layer of the root chakra will try and close it back down. And Uranus's purpose is to open it back up so that the Pluto energy can come up the spine again. So it gets a lot of chaos going. The natural way to work with this is to allow the energy to just be addressed. Many times you can start having spontaneous memories of old sexual wounds, old survival wounds, root chakra, all kinds of old wounds that start to become conscious, and you think, oh gosh, what am I doing with this again? I've dealt with this 30 times in this life. It means that there is still something, it's the peeling the layers off of an onion. There's still something that needs to be addressed and worked with. All right? Now, as we start to move this Kundalini energy up the spine through the chakras, we run into the second chakra. The rulerships are Neptune and Jupiter. And how we will look at this again, as I explained a little bit earlier, you will see that Pluto and Neptune have rulerships of 2 chakras each. And we talked about Neptune and the purpose of the sexual energy on a metaphysical level is to expand consciousness up into the crown chakra. So Neptune is going to come back down here to this sexual energy because that's one of the most natural ways that we will have that energetic relief, energetic release, but also that rebirthing of energy within us comes through the sexual impulse. And so this is how Neptune can start to rule this type of energy. Jupiter, it's going to relate to the principle of growth and expansion. When we have this sacral chakra, if we did not have the sexual impulse to procreate the species, we wouldn't last very long. So there's this energy to expand and grow through sexuality. What happens to this energy relative to the distortions of natural sexuality as they exist in today's world? We have all of the glamorization of sexuality. Relate this to Neptune and Jupiter. We have all of the glamorization of the imagery of sexuality. Relate this to Jupiter and to Neptune. In other words, we have the sexual fantasies, the playboys, the playgirls, all of the pornographic distortions that we see. Can you see how this starts to relate to Jupiter and Neptune? When we relate to it in the physical body, this is going to relate to the whole genital area. This is going to relate to all of the genital organs that we will look at in both male and female. So if you start to see a lot of harsh aspects to Neptune and to Jupiter, you can start to correlate it to imbalances that will show up all of the way along the genital area. All right, everybody relating to this? Questions? Anybody? Okay. Yes, sir.
You have the nodes separating first and second chakra.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. In Western astrology, in Western EA, evolutionary astrology, when Uranus relates to the brain and the spinal column, it also relates to the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system. Part of the peripheral nervous system is going to be the parasympathetic nervous system, which relates to the north node. This is the rest and digest. And it's going to relate to the sympathetic nervous system of the south node. This is the fight or flight. The other thing that starts to happen with raising the Kundalini energy, activating the root chakra, is with Uranus ruling so much of the nervous system starts to get stressed. A very common thing that will happen when you activate the root chakra with Uranus is that you will start to go into intense stress for no reason. You will have hot and cold sensations. You will overtax the adrenals. You will overtax everything and you will just be wired. Or you will retreat. You will try to put that Saturn lid back on. But the nodal axis, south node sympathetic, fight or flight. North node parasympathetic, rest and digest. Part of the peripheral nervous system. Okay? And so that when you activate this root chakra, this energy starts to crawl up and it will activate each chakra, but it can also create chaos in any of the other chakras. Okay? Thank you. Moving on into the willpower chakra. The third chakra, this is co-ruled by Pluto and Saturn. This is where the seat of consciousness rests with most of the westernized world. We relate it to the ego. We relate it to the willpower. How many of us relate to that whole stomach area being our ability to energize something and go after it? We can relate to Mars with Western rulerships being action, being the desire nature. In evolutionary astrology, your Western rulerships, Pluto relates to the conscious desires of Mars relates to the conscious desires of the soul. Pluto relates to the unconscious desires of the soul. Side trip. I was going to give you my filter, my astrological filter. I have a lot of Scorpio in my chart. I have 5 planets in the 9th house. A lot of them, the Scorpio planets in the 9th house. So my filter tends to come through in this way. Pluto relates to those core issues of the soul, the deep unconscious desires of the soul. And I'm not relating myself to the willpower chakra. I just remembered my little tidbit. The tidbit I wanted to tell you is that up there in the 9th house, I have a Sun, Mercury, Neptune conjunction from 1 to 2 degrees Scorpio. So if I transpose a word, correct me. That was what I wanted to say.
Saturn earlier.
Yeah, it's okay. So this willpower for most of us in the westernized world will relate right here to the stomach. All right? And so again, I gave you that example earlier. Somebody has major stomach issues. You don't see any correlations with the moon. You could start to look at this chakra right here and look for harsh aspects to Mars or Pluto. This chakra, the third chakra, is going to relate to the whole stomach area. Okay, the lower organs that all rest right in here. Not the genitals, but the whole stomach, the duodenum, and everything that relates to our ability to digest food and assimilate food. And so again, the whole purpose of activating the root chakra is to then take this energy up so that our willpower that's based upon ego can transfer into being willpower that is based upon the soul, which is taking it all the way up here to the crown chakra. Moving on, coming into the heart chakra. This is ruled by Venus. Physically, this will rule the whole area around the heart and the chest and the lungs and the breath work of being able to move the energy in and out with the breath. And so we will have all the distortions that will start to come from the heart and the lungs. When you see harsh aspects to Venus, you wouldn't traditionally notice this with the Western rulerships necessarily. In evolutionary astrology, Western rulerships, Venus and Mars. Venus relates to white blood cells, Mars red blood cells. Venus relates to estrogen, Mars to progesterone. Venus to estrogen in the male, males have estrogen. Mars to testosterone. Venus relates to cortisone, Mars relates to adrenaline with the adrenals. And so Venus and Mars have a lot of rulerships in Western EA to all of the disorders of the blood, all of the disorders of the adrenals, etc. But here in the Eastern Chakra System of EA, we're looking at Venus relating to the heart and the lungs, the chest cavity, the upper chest cavity. And of course, as that Kundalini energy raises, what starts to activate in this heart chakra are abilities to give and receive love. These are the emotional things. And so harsh aspects to Venus, you're going to have somebody that, again, has to learn these lessons. You can easily see this through the Western correlations. To give you another example of how you could work with this type of energy, let's just say we have someone who has a Venus-Saturn square in their chart. If you look at it through this system, you could start to see we have issues with the heart that relate to our ability to survive Saturn. So we could close down the heart, Saturn, that core root chakra that wants to crystallize everything, that wants to freeze everything, push everything back down. relate it to a Saturn square to Venus, and you could start to see the heart issues start to come in. You could see the things that are known as, help me out, arteriosclerosis, the hardenings of the heart and all those kind of things. You can start to see this through the Eastern system that way. Yes?
By that logic, can you, in a way to like heal or work with that energy, and like if you have a trine or sextile to another planet, work with blending the chakra associated with the other planet of the trine and sextile with
Yes.
the afflicted planet?
Yes.
So like if there was a Venus, I don't know, Venus Jupiter, trine in that chart, could you work with
Yes.
the second chakra, Jupiter,
Mm-hmm.
to help that?
Yes, you can. A general basic when you start working with health and wellness in astrology is that all of your quote-unquote hard aspects, those conjunctions, oppositions, etc., will relate to the stress. The trines will relate to strengths. Now, it's not a hard and fast rule. You know there are none of those in astrology. But for yes, you could then start to look for the Venus aspects that were trines or sextiles and relate them to these other chakras, and then you can relate. Yep, good point. Thank you, honey. Yeah, clear? So as we are moving along here, I'm doing pretty good. Getting up to the throat chakra, which is ruled by Mercury. This is going to relate to the throat, to the thyroid, to the thymus, to the larynx, to all of this energy that has us being able to speak, to open our voice. It will also relate with Mercury, Western rulership's left brain, relating to some of this ability to process through information, get stuck in our throat. Okay, makes sense? It's pretty easy to see as we're starting to do this. So as this moves up along the spine and we move up through willpower based with soul merging with ego being an expression for the soul, then the heart learning how to give and receive love, and then learning how to give expressions of all of this. We can then move up to what we call the medulla ajna chakra for us, the third eye chakra. In evolutionary astrology, the Eastern system, when we will look at that third eye, we will have a tendency to know it more to be right in between our two eyes, being the lower part of the forehead. It's really the projection to the third eye that happens. In EA, we relate the medulla ajna to being up here, higher in the forehead, in the middle of the body, being just an inch or two below the crown chakra. This has co-rulership of the moon and the sun. And I want to be clear on this. I don't want to transpose my stuff, so excuse me just a moment here. Yes. Moon, medulla, sun, ajna. And so when we start to relate to the sixth chakra right here, we start to relate to everything that concerns the head. We start to relate it to the eyes, to the brain, to the pituitary gland, the pineal gland, the hypothalamus, all of the glands that will exist up there in the head, all of the energy that exists up there. So sometimes when in our astrology, EA, Uranus will relate to the brain. You don't see any harsh Uranus aspects. You can go up here and look to see how harsh the aspects are to the sun and the moon, to see if there's energy right in there relating to the whole brain area, working with that. Okay? Now, I'll give you the Western rulerships for the sun and the moon. In EA, women, sun, left eye, moon, right eye. Men, flip it. Moon, left eye, sun, right eye. In the women, the sun rules the left eye, moon, right eye. In men, it's the opposite. Western correlations, the sun and the moon will relate to the eyes in the Eastern chakra system. Relating to the sixth chakra, the third eye chakra, it will also relate to the eyes and the whole head area. So there's a whole lot of stuff that can get involved when you start dealing with the whole area of the head and the brain and all of the glands that are existing in there. So this can be a support system, a secondary area where you can really go in to look to see if people are having all their issues with any of the glands. And to just briefly tell you, I'll bring some more Western correlations in for you. The hypothalamus is ruled by Uranus in Western EA, and that is the gland that emits all the chemical messages to the body. The pineal gland is ruled by Neptune in Western EA, and that is the gland that secretes the melatonin that helps us increase or expand in consciousness from the Western perspective. And then the pituitary gland is co-ruled by Jupiter and Saturn. Growth and decay is regulated. It's the pituitary gland, known as the master gland, regulates all the growth and decay in the body. You can easily see that through Jupiter, the growth, Saturn, the decay. Yes?
Where's the thyroid come in?
Thyroid is over here in the 5th chakra. Okay, everybody following? And so then, finally, we move ourselves up to the crown chakra, which is on top of the head, ruled by Neptune. And that's the whole goal of the chakra system, is to move the Kundalini energy up the spine. By the time we have fully activated the crown chakra, we no longer have a need to be in physical form. We exit through the crown chakra when we leave our body in each incarnation. And so the crown chakra is the energy that represents all of the reconnection with source energy. So when we have the harsh aspects to Neptune, we can have our connection to source energy cut off. And unfortunately, it's how a lot of us exist in the westernized world. We have a tendency to want to take this crown chakra energy, move it down to the third eye. And we want to relate intellectually to source energy rather than really reconnecting to source energy. In Western astrology, just to briefly touch upon this, because it's a broad concept, but I think it's very germane to society right now. Most of your human-made conditionings that we call religions are based upon philosophies that separate spirit and flesh. Therein lies all the distortions to sexuality. All you've got to do is start looking at religion to see all of this. And so what we have observed in evolutionary astrology is based upon observation, correlation. How can you actually observe this and correlate it? When you start to look at what is happening here at the ending of this Piscean age, we find a lot of our New Age or metaphysical people are more or less trying to get into their mental and spiritual bodies and ignore the emotional body. In other words, we're trying to activate all of these higher chakra systems without first activating the root chakra and the sacral chakra and returning to our natural relationships with those. So I have this concept of saying that many of us in this spiritualizing movement are playing emotional catch-up. We're having to learn how to reconnect spirit and flesh. We're having to reconnect the emotional body to the mental and spiritual body. All you've got to do is look around you, look around at your friends. How many people profess to have it all together? Their emotional life is got a few lessons going on. And so this is a huge thing. From evolutionary astrology's perspective, whenever we get to any of the mutation of the ages, and again, long-term cycle, 300 to 500-year process, no specific dates. There's many dates out there. For my ninth house perspective, the date matters less, the process matters more. When we get to mutations of the ages, the previous age is culminating, and everything that's wounded or distorted is coming to a head, to be addressed, to be healed, to metamorphose into a new age. And so, again, what we have going on at the ending of this Piscean age is all of the emotional distortions coming to the surface to be healed on a very broad basis. Anytime you see outer planets going through water signs, that stuff is all being activated. And so what many times will have to happen is when you are looking at this whole physical body, this whole sexual body, How well can we separate it from an emotional body? You can't. And anytime you try to suppress something, Saturn, it just gets distorted and appears to come back at you. It comes back as the distortions with sexuality. It comes back with the distortions of all our emotional lives. And you can really blend that physical, emotional body together and create some interesting things. But so that emotional body is the physical body. And when we learn to look at that spirit and flesh thing, and we look at this flesh and that fact that it is the emotional body, a lot of our spiritual work is reconnecting the emotional and spiritual bodies. And so this whole activation of this crown chakra as we're doing our meditation work and really trying to heal, it comes to us emotionally. We can have the big mental aha, but you also have all the emotional ahas. And if you take that back to the broadest concepts, that Neptune will relate to, we are all one. And all of the emotional connections that come in. Evolutionary astrology goes by the concepts of looking at inclusiveness versus exclusiveness. And inclusiveness, the giving, sharing concepts that we start to go through. This is all the things that will be activated when you really move into activating your crown chakra on the highest levels you can. 40 minutes. I did it. So there's lots more I could say, but I just really wanted to be able to just make it through here, relate to some of the physical concepts for you, then also relate to some of the emotional, mental concepts, just giving you some tidbits. So we do have some time for Q&A. If anybody has any other questions they'd like to ask, I can keep talking. Questions? Pondering.
The Western rulerships that EA has devised, I couldn't quite catch them all. Are they in the book?
We have a few of them in a book. In the information that I passed out for you, the flyer that I passed out, you will see right on the top of there, some of this stuff is taken from the book Uranus. It's available to download for free on our website. That has some of them, not all of them. Wait for my next forthcoming book. Actually, my whole thing, the green flyer I passed out, I'll teach, I'm planning to teach a week-long segment on that. I can briefly go through some of them if you want to in the remaining minutes. Would that be helpful to everybody? Try and work our way through some of these as we're working through all of this. As we started to speak earlier with the rulership of the eyes with the sun and the moon, in Western EA, the sun relates to the life force. It's our ability to have our strength, to be alive. The sun also, with its rulership of Leo, relates to the heart. We will call it the willpower in some ways as well, the willpower coming through the sun in that direction. Okay? The moon will relate to all of the fluids in the body, the acid-alkaline balance in the body. It will relate to all of the containers in the body. And again, we spoke previously about the eyes. Mercury has co-rulership with Uranus of the nervous system. In Western EA, Mercury rules the left brain, Jupiter rules the right brain. Mercury rules the conscious mind, Uranus rules the unconscious mind. And so Mercury will have co-rulership with Uranus of the nervous system. It will also, just like it does here with the throat chakra, relate a lot to the thyroid. Okay? Venus will relate to, well, we touched upon Venus and Mars a little bit earlier, the whole adrenaline thing, the blood with the white blood cells, Venus, red blood cells, Mars. We will look at, Venus has a specific rulership to the kidneys, to the ducts of the kidneys. Again, I'm not going to get at this 100%, just trying to briefly go through some of these for you, all right? Mars will have a lot to relate to energy in the body through the red blood cells. The active energy. Mars and Venus have a lot of correlations, and when you start working with Mars and Venus and the whole system of blood in the body, you can bring up a whole wealth of physical correlations to imbalances. All of the blood imbalances that you start to work through. Again, we talked about Jupiter and Saturn in the Western system having co-rulership to the pituitary gland, the master gland. Jupiter has a specific relationship to the prostate. Jupiter and Saturn have co-rulership of the minerals. Jupiter, along with Pluto, has relationship to the liver. Jupiter's co-ruler of the liver. Many of the organs are ruled by Pluto. Pluto has a relationship specifically to the pancreas. It has a relationship to the liver. It has, Pluto has relationship to all of to RNA, DNA. Pluto's life force in EA. So it has a correlation to viruses and bacteria and fungus. Prions, if anybody of you are familiar with prions evolving on the planet. Prions are incomplete pieces of protein that have no nucleus. The body doesn't know what to do with them. The most famous prions are mad cow and scrapie in sheep. In human form, it's known as Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. I have some other work that I do, and in that other work, we basically, at this point, have found about 300-400 variations of prions. Prions are going to be emerging on the planet over the next decade is a real interesting factor. And what happens is prions have a tendency to accumulate in the organs of the body. The 3 diseases I just mentioned were prions accumulating in the brain of humans, cows, and sheep, but prions accumulate all over the body. And for those of you, if you breathe air, you ingest prions. It's not a vegetarian, it's not a meat thing. If you breathe air, you ingest prions. Did you have a question?
Yes. When you identify an imbalance by looking at a chart, so there's an opposition, it's a problem, and you see other ways to harmonize, how do you go about helping the person work with that then?
Basic nutrition, diet, exercise, and rest. Okay, for me, basic nutrition is diet, exercise, and rest. And oh, by the way, this lecture is for entertainment purposes only. I'm not here to diagnose, treat, or cure disease. Or prevent, that's the 4th one. So yes, I work a lot. Not only do we work with correlating what's the imbalances or what's the potential for imbalances, here are the potentials for working with all of the healing. So then there's the whole thing when you start working with the diet. You know, what planet correlates to this and what planet correlates to that, and how do you work with, and you know, for instance, Pluto relates to enzymes. So if you have stressed Pluto in your chart, it might help to supplement digestive enzymes. But also, when I work with health and wellness from a Western perspective, and you look at your Westernized diet, my first supplement of choice is digestive enzymes, because how many of us have a diet that is 70 to 100% raw food? If your diet's less than 70, 80% raw foods, you have a need for digestive enzymes. So yes, work with when I do health and wellness readings, which, by the way, you've got all my contact information, anybody interested, I do those. Best thing to do is contact the 800 number, set up an appointment with my assistant. But I do work with the correlations of, well, let's not just look at the imbalance, let's look at the healing. And there's equal energy to both, even more energy to the whole healing aspect. And so let me see where I was. Let me see if I can get through a couple more of these for you. A couple of other things that I wanted to say in regards to Pluto, relating to all the viruses, bacteria, fungus, prions. Pluto relates to many of the core organs of the body. Pluto also relates to the whole process of being able to move elimination through the intestines and the colon tract. Saturn specific to the anal canal and the anus, but Pluto is the whole colon and the elimination thing. 25, 30 years ago, when I first started working with taking nutrition classes, I worked with a gentleman who was a biochemist for the government in World War II. And his thing, that's when they were first starting to create all of the chemicals that are now so common we think nothing of it. It was a very political thing back then in World War II, and he actually walked away from his government work because he refused to be a part of creating all of these chemicals that we have in our world. He's the one who preached to me, and my 8th house Pluto really got it. The life begins and ends in the colon. The first place, if you just want to work with some of your basic health and basic nutrition, cleansing the colon. And look at how this starts to relate to the chakra system, which, you know, I didn't talk anything of that. When you start working with colon cleanses, it is a lifelong process. It is not a 2-week cleanse and you're fixed. It is a lifelong process. Our Western society thinks if you have a bowel movement every 3rd or 4th day, you're normal. You should have 3 to 4 bowel movements per day. And your bowel movements should be something that flow freely and easily out of you. It should not be diarrhea, but it should be able to... I'm a Scorpio. I have an 8th house Pluto. I don't mean to touch on any sensitive subjects for anybody. But your bowel movements, you know, really, your bowel movements should be the diameter of a hot dog. Okay? And they should be able to break apart in the water. All right? And that's when you know you have your colon clean. When you can be able to move yourself to bowel movements like that. There's lots of colon cleanse products out there, but it's really a lot about correcting the diet. And again, it is a lifelong thing. It's about getting enough fiber in the diet. A product that I love for helping to cleanse the colon, cleanse the circulation, cleanse every organ of the body. I can't recommend this product for my family enough. I have a 12-year-old who doesn't necessarily like this product, but the MSM, or organic sulfur, it's a very common mineral. You can buy it in your little capsules. Your capsules give you about 1,000 milligrams per capsule. I take about 10,000 milligrams a day. And it is a product, it's easy if you buy it in the powder form. And you really have to learn how to work your way up to the dosage. If you buy MSM and you start taking too much of it, you'll get a flushing like a cold. By the way, the cold is the cure. Okay? Colds are our friend. You get a cold. Hallelujah. My body is strong enough to flush it out. Okay? But MSM is great. It makes your hair, it gives you the skin, your nails, your hair. It makes all of that stuff just grow healthy and strong. So you notice it on the outside. Imagine what it's doing on the inside. It will help you regulate the bowels.
Are you using it just as a maintenance continual?
Yes, I use it as continually on a maintenance level. Mm-hmm.
I have a second question concerning parasites.
Yes, parasites?
Pluto?
Parasites are ruled by Pluto. Good one. Mm-hmm. Parasites are a symbiotic relationship with us. Parasites is just like we've come to know the word. It's another entity wanting to live off of us. There are some parasites that are natural in the body. There are some parasites that are unnatural in the body. Another one of my little 9th house philosophical statements, Mother Nature's best birth control is parasites. Mother Nature's best birth control is parasites. Not from a sexuality viewpoint, but if you guys are interested, we're booth number 23. Please stop by the booth, and I'd be very happy to tell you about my other work, which is completely into the health and wellness modality. It's a 24/7 healing program that I'm a facilitator for, and that's the work where I learn a lot about prions. I learn a lot about chemtrails and airborne stuff that are all out there. Also learn about parasites. A lot of times when we leave the physical body and the traditional authorities will say, oh, they died of a stroke. They died of parasites in the brain. They died of a heart attack. They died of parasites in the heart. We are full of parasites. Now, it's learning to have a symbiotic relationship with them. Again, it's another one of these things. If you think you're going to eliminate parasites out of you, you might as well stop eating and drinking water. Become a breatharian. Then you can eliminate the parasites. Otherwise, it's really learning how to have a healthy body. And again, a lot of disease comes from a lack of mineralization. It comes from an over-acidic body. And it comes from a very sluggish body, and sluggish bodies are acidic. So when you really make things go from the mouth to the anus in a very smooth flowing way, you alkalize and you strengthen the body and you naturally heal whatever you need to heal. That MSM powder that I told you about, it also is a way to really alkalize the body as well. I have a Capricorn rising. And so I have a tendency to be miseconomical. After spending 30 years in the world of supplements, I kind of have gotten, okay, what works, what doesn't work, and how can I do it as efficiently as possible, as economically as possible. So, again, I've got a week-long school on this. If you guys are really enticed and interested, I'd love to have you. So, any final questions, anything? I think we're doing really good on time unless my watch stopped. I'm doing really good on time. We've got another 5 minutes we could go.
So can you do Uranus and Neptune? Those are the only two you missed.
Okay. Uranus will relate a lot with the brain and the nervous system in the Western EA. And again, co-rulership of the nervous system. Uranus has the major rulership of the nervous system, but Mercury comes in as a co-ruler. So you really, when you're working with everything in the nervous system, you really want to look with both Uranus and Mercury in regards to that. Okay? And Neptune is in Western EA. Good one, thank you. Neptune is the overall ruler of the immune system. Neptune is the overall ruler of the endocrine system. We'll have different planetary rulerships to the different glands that I told you about, okay? I told you about pituitary, Jupiter, Saturn. Venus will rule the ovaries, okay? And Mars will rule the gland in the prostate along with Jupiter. But Neptune has the overall rulership of the immune system. So, and this is where when you look in your charts, your Western charts, you look to the 6th house and the 12th house. The sign on the cusp of the 6th house and planets in the 6th house will describe all of the physical imbalances that you have. The sign on the 12th house cusp and any planets in the 12th house cusp, and wherever you find Neptune in your chart by house sign aspect, that will describe where you have the overall weaknesses to the immune system that are creating all those physical imbalances in the 6th house. So you can work a lot with the 6th and the 12th house cusps to really get some of the physical imbalances. And then again, Neptune correlating to the origins of where those imbalances are coming from. Okay? And Neptune, in its broadest sense in Western EA, is relating to the collective conscious unconsciousness, or God, Goddess, Great Spirit, Source Energy in its broadest form. That is Neptune. So Neptune ruling the overall immune system will relate to how much strength that you actually have in your connection to Source Energy. So you can, so when the question that the gentleman had earlier of, okay, we're describing all these imbalances, thank you very much, Miss Negative. As we work into the positive or the healing, whenever I work with helping somebody heal, all healing takes place on 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. We put a lot of energy into that physical, which is where the whole diet, exercise, and rest comes in. But any imbalance, no matter what level of manifestation it is, any physical imbalance has an emotional imbalance behind it. There's a mental imbalance behind that, and there's a spiritual imbalance behind that. And all of those imbalances on any level are related to a disconnect of source energy. So you want to be looking at your healing on 4 levels. And I always tell people, your greatest answers come from inwardly asking your questions. What is the best thing for me to do to heal XYZ on physical levels? What is the best thing for me to do to heal XYZ on emotional levels? And you inwardly ask that question, and you ask and you ask and you ask until your own connection to source energy brings it to you. You know, or if you've got to go to the left brain thing, it's when you run into the third person who tells you about the same book. You know, your answers come in all kinds of ways appearing to come to you. But when you inwardly ask for those answers as again and again and again, source energy will answer. It has no, all it wants to do is answer. All it wants to do is reconnect. So all you've got to do is get your left brain out of the way sometimes and open up. Evolutionary astrology is really based upon returning the power to self. You know, not authority based outside of self, but authority based from within ourselves. And finding source energy connections from within ourselves. Okay, I'm probably needing to be done, so thank you all very, very much.